Welcome to the Weird and Wicked podcast. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kristen.
And we're two sisters with a passion for the mysterious and the unknown. On our podcast, we will explore killer cases and the most puzzling phenomena.
Come with us down the rabbit hole, where we'll take a magnifying glass to the most bizarre, unnerving, and unbelievable stories. From true crime and conspiracy theories to ghosts and cryptids, we'll cover it all.
Today we'll be sharing the story of Matthew Pendergrast's disappearance.
I still can't wrap my head around this case.
Let's get into it, shall we?
Warning: this episode contains topics such as mysterious disappearance and mentions of suicide. It is strictly intended for mature audiences only. Be advised that the following content may be triggering to some listeners who are sensitive to such topics. We can all help prevent suicide. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 immediately. This story is recounted from a number of sources that are listed in the show notes. Our discussion on this podcast is based solely on our own research and conclusions. Listener discretion is advised.
Happy Wednesday, everyone!
It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. We wanted to release another bonus episode, honestly, because this case just boggles our minds.
Yeah, it is super interesting. I'm excited to share it with you guys.
Same. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about it, and I guess that means we should get into it. Matthew David Pendergrast was born on January 4th, 1977, to his parents Jeff and Mary Ellen. Matthew grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, where his father was a cosmetic and reconstructive surgeon. His parents and friends described him as unselfish, kind, and caring. The motivated and intelligent young man moved to Memphis, Tennessee to attend college at Rhodes College. 2 weeks away from graduating, Matthew was known to be a great student. He was very involved throughout his years at college, joining a fraternity, partaking in sports like soccer and track and field, and being dedicated to his studies. His parents also shared that he had a big interest in mission work and had spent 2 summers volunteering at an orphanage located in the Dominican Republic. He had also planned after graduating to dedicate his life to nonprofit work similar to this.
This just goes to show you what a truly genuine and caring person he was. Like, so far, he seems like just a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Regular
Super
guy.
genuine dude.
Yeah.
Always, what's the word? Like, he's like involved with school. So,
right.
I also
He's an
read
athlete.
he was in, I think he was either in the band or he would just loved like playing musical instruments, and he was also like a big part of the plays that they would host at the school too. So he was just a cool dude who like did everything and was like super friendly.
Mm-hmm.
A close friend of Matthew's at the time, Jason Woods, now shares that he can recall that Matthew had such a huge passion for life and had so much creativity inside him. Woods shares, quote, "We spent many nights in intellectual discussions that ranged from existential philosophy to literature to quantum physics," end quote. That's a lot to be like just talking about.
Yeah.
Like just a casual conversation about quantum physics, No big deal.
Yeah. I can't say that I ever had a night like that in college where I just hung out with friends and talked about quantum physics and
philosophy
philosophy,
and literature.
existential philosophy at that. Oh my gosh.
Again, it just shows you that he was so intelligent, willing to discuss it, not just like be a part of school.
Yeah, he wasn't just like cheating his way through. Like he was actually doing the work, and he was extremely intelligent.
Mm-hmm. His big brother in their fraternity explains, quote, "Matt never took himself too seriously. He was a good balance between an introvert and an extrovert," end quote.
On the morning of Friday, December 1st, 2000, Matthew was scheduled to attend his Spanish class at 9 a.m. The woman who he rented his room from claimed to have heard him moving around his room and she said he eventually left in his Navy 1998 Toyota 4Runner around 7:30 and 8 a.m. It is reported that Matthew never made it to his Spanish class that next morning. The night before, Matthew was in a play at school, and friends came forward saying that when seeing him, they thought his behavior was, quote, very upbeat, end quote. So I guess to them it seemed that nothing was up. It was just like he was normal, upbeat,
Normal,
in a good
upbeat, yeah.
mood.
Yeah, and he was in the play, so that
Mm-hmm.
was like normal for him. I don't think anyone really noticed any signs of weird activity or a weird
Mm-hmm.
mood with him at all.
It was just a regular night.
Mhm.
But as hour after hour passed with no sign of Matthew, his friends became increasingly worried about him. Knowing that this wasn't like him, a few friends began calling him. Over and over, the calls went unanswered. Matthew was never seen or heard from again. Some sources state that it was later that day, and some state that it was the following day. But Matthew's SUV had been discovered by hunters around 2 p.m. off of a private dirt road in Lanoke Country, Arkansas, about 120 miles from Memphis, Tennessee. The car was unlocked with keys still in the ignition and his backpack left behind.
So that's pretty far from his school
Yeah, 120 miles. That's
in a whole different
his.
state.
Mm-hmm. He
Um
either traveled really far or somebody drove him out really far, but
mhm.
regardless, it's just weird that it was just found with the keys in the ignition. His backpack was still there. Like you'd think if
Mhm.
he left, he would bring it with him.
And he wasn't from Arkansas, like his family lived in Georgia like we mentioned. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of just like a random spot for him, I feel like.
Yeah. And as far as we know, at least in the sources, there's not really any indication that he had been there before, right? Like he
Correct.
didn't
Yeah.
really take trips to Arkansas or anything. That
Mm-mm.
wasn't really like him.
Nothing that
So
I found. Yeah.
it's just weird.
Because of the weird circumstances, authorities quickly decided to search the surrounding area and ended up finding a neatly folded stack of Matthew's clothes, including blue jeans, a t shirt, and shoes and socks. Placed near the clothes was his journal. In addition to this, they found his wallet containing his driver's license, $46 in cash, a credit card belonging to him, and family photos. So, like, this was probably all of his possessions that were with him.
Yeah,
I'm
just a lot of
assuming.
personal items that typically you would bring with you wherever you
Mhm.
go.
Exactly. Some accounts differ in the question of whether or not his shoes were wet or dry, but many accounts state that his jeans were wet from the knees down. Investigators also made it a point to mention that despite the colder weather that day, there were no jackets or any sweaters found on the scene or in the area at all.
Hmm.
Over the course of the following days, there were multiple searches conducted that included the use of canine teams that specialized in scent tracking, helicopters with night vision, and divers equipped with sonar. Despite these extensive searches led by investigators, there were no other signs of Matthew. No scent, no signs of a struggle, no footprints, weapons, or DNA was found.
Yeah, so it was kind of just a interesting scene, a little bit
Very
perplexing.
absolutely.
The evidence that was left didn't really seem to add up.
It didn't really lead them anywhere either.
Right. Yeah.
Like the journal or his clothes. I can't imagine what they were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
There's no signs of a struggle, so it's just like, what the hell happened?
Right. Yeah. Now, going back to the journal that was found at the scene, reports state that, quote, this journal was full of bits of poetry, philosophical musings on the nature of life and death, talking of a desire for immortality, walking into water and becoming one with nature again, as well as references to the silver elves, end quote. To sum up, the Silver Elves is a group that describes themselves as a family of elves who advocate for the spiritual path to self discovery and immortality.
This was
Matthew's.
I was
Yeah,
just
if this yeah, I don't know why I didn't to
you're
talk
good.
about that one.
It's
That
weird. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard of them before.
it
The
rings a
silver elves,
bell,
right? It
but
does
I'm
ring a
not
bell.
sure if I've heard
But
it before.
it's just so random. Like, from what we know of his life and like the way he was with friends and in college and stuff, I don't
Mhm.
know. Like, it's just so, I don't know. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's just off, I
Mhm.
think, is the best
Super
way
off.
to describe it. Just not like
Absolutely.
him.
Mhm.
Because all of his friends were describing him as like a regular guy. He participated in a lot of different school activities. He did the play, but nothing about like trying to become one with nature or
Mhm.
he never spoke about the silver elves, I
It's just
assume.
really random. I don't
Yeah.
know where that, like, why that ties in.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
So, Matthew's family firmly believe that he wouldn't have taken his own life, and there was no evidence recovered that would suggest that he was involved in or partook in any kind of drugs or illegal activity. From the beginning of their investigation, the Memphis Police Department considered this case a missing persons case and didn't necessarily believe that there was any foul play involved. Eventually, the case was handed off to the Arkansas State Police, who still consider it open and are still taking leads to this day.
So yeah, from the research that we found, it became evident to me that the Memphis Police Department really didn't think that there was any foul play,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of didn't want to pursue it. I got the feeling because of that. They got the feeling it was just like either a mysterious death or a suicide.
Yeah.
So they're just like, okay, I guess we'll just hand this off. I don't know why it got handed off to the Arkansas State Police.
I guess because it happened
It happened
there,
there.
like they found the car there.
Hmm.
Um, and I
Maybe he was.
assume
I'm not
Memphis police.
sure. Go
Go
ahead. Sorry.
ahead. I assume the Memphis Police Department just didn't know where else to go with it, you know?
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, he was a student there, but
His missing persons report was filed in Memphis, I guess. But then
okay.
his car
So
was
that's
found
why
in
they
Arkansas.
started.
I'm
Right.
assuming that. It's a little odd though.
Mhm.
While the case is still open, there are some prevailing theories among investigators and armchair detectives alike. The main theory that we found to be fairly popular is that Matthew decided to surrender himself to the bayou as part of a mysterious ritual. And this is kind
Mhm.
of where his journal comes into play and the elves and all those kind of weird poems and whatnot that were in there.
Mhm.
But Matthew's family and close friends adamantly deny this idea, stating that they don't believe he had any reason to kill himself.
Of course, no one knows what is going on in a person's mind unless they open up about it, unless the
Hmm.
person tells them about it. But like maybe he was depressed or had some other issue and chose not to share it because that does happen quite often
Hmm.
where
That
people
does.
like it's a
Just don't.
surprise to some people that people will commit suicide because they seemed perfectly happy, like their lives were great.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not always how it seems, I
Yeah,
guess.
exactly. Yeah, no one can judge by the outward
Hmm.
expressions or like appearance that you put out.
Yeah. So I would never, I guess you could say I wouldn't say it's impossible,
True.
you know?
Yeah. Another theory suggests that Matthew left his family and friends to start a new life.
This doesn't make sense to me personally because I couldn't imagine being 2 weeks away from graduating college, literally 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And then you just up and move away. I
It
would
doesn't make
never do
sense to
that.
me.
I would finish, you
No.
know?
Yeah, and like
Um,
leaving your friends and your
mhm.
family behind, like them just wondering what happened to you. I
Yeah.
think if you were to leave your life behind, I feel like most people would tell their parents. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, because at least the parents might have a hint. Like they might have
Yeah.
seen him like becoming depressed or like he wasn't, maybe he wouldn't do as many of the activities that he typically would do, but that wasn't the
Mhm.
case at all. So that's what makes it so weird here.
Exactly.
It was just completely random.
Yeah, I don't get why you would get so close to your degree and just not
Mhm.
finish it. Or like why not
Yeah.
just finish it and then if you really want to move away, like do it afterwards. Like why
Mhm.
cut it short and leave all your stuff back home, leave your personal belongings in your car. It
Yeah.
just doesn't add up to me. You would need a car at least.
Right.
So, the third theory that we found in our research is that of a drug deal gone bad. So, again, this one doesn't add up to me. Like the way he conducted his life, the friends that he had, and everything that they had to say about him.
Mhm.
I mean, of course, you never know what's going on in someone's like personal life, but it just doesn't add up to me. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, all of his friends said he would never was into drugs, or his parents or somebody said that in one of the sources.
Hmm.
Um, he wasn't into drugs. He didn't do drugs. He wasn't really around them all that much either. So it just doesn't make sense for him to get caught in the middle of a bad drug deal,
Yeah. And
and have
all of the
something happen.
mysterious, like the clothes and the personal items just
Mhm.
stacked neatly there. It's just very odd for
Yeah.
that to be the case.
Mhm.
So I think it's also important to note that Matthew's mother was skeptical that he would have placed his clothes neatly folded and stacked. She states, quote, "Our son was not the neatest soul in the world," end quote. It was also stated that he left his room in disarray before his disappearance. This information confirms for Mary Ellen that he did not do this by his own volition.
And Mary Ellen was his mom,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So his mom literally said that she didn't like, it was weird to her that all the things were stacked up neatly.
Mhm.
So sorry, I'm just trying to make sense of of this,
Yeah.
because it's like
So
all of the items were found neatly and like stacked up neatly or folded
and
up,
folded
whatever.
up, yeah. Mhm.
She doesn't think he was that neat. So that just adds to like the weirdness of the situation, I
Exactly.
guess I'm trying to say.
The
Because
only like
I don't
the
know.
only reason I could think is like I don't even know it. I can't put it together. Cause like investigators found his room, it was like a complete mess, which is more in
Yeah.
line to his typical behavior.
Yeah.
So, I don't
So
know, I'm
either he just had like a complete change in personality, or somebody was there and like
mhm,
tried to make it seem like there wasn't a struggle, maybe.
mhm.
I guess that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so according to a private investigator hired by the family, he thinks that the way the clothes were left just didn't add up. He
Hmm.
states that the jeans, quote, were wet up to the knees, yet the drainage ditch between where the vehicle was found and where his clothes were found laid was filled with water that would have come up much higher on Matt than his knees, probably up over his head. I think it was all staged, end quote.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting that we've got this like PI saying the complete opposite of what investigators are like thinking.
Yeah.
So again, like none of it is really adding up for me. It's just a huge, big old mystery.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think again, like maybe the police just wanted to wrap it up and be like, can't do anything about it.
Hmm.
But
It's weird. This one was really short and I could only find a handful of sources on it. So
hmm,
if anyone knows more information about it,
yeah.
feel free
Or any of the
to.
answers to all of our questions here.
Exactly.
Because
Feel
there's
free
so many
to
questions with this case.
Yeah, there really are, like, so many random scenarios in
Yeah.
that don't add up
And
to
it's
me or his
definitely,
family.
yeah. And it's definitely a lesser known case.
Mhm.
Of course, you hear about all the big ones. Trying to think of names right now, but of course I'm blanking. But
Yeah.
I had never heard of this one before, is my point.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think one of our goals, I think we've said this before in one of the other true crime episodes we've done, is one of our goals here is to shed some light on some of these lesser known cases and
Mhm.
possibly help get the answers that the families deserve and the friends deserve.
Absolutely.
So, the more
Or help
information, sorry, go ahead.
we keep interrupting each other. I forget what
That
I was gonna
always
say
happens.
now. Oh, I think the more pressure also that is just out there will help in general. Because if no
Mhm.
one's putting pressure on law enforcement, then they're not that
Right.
motivated to work on it, I think.
Yeah,
Especially because
exactly.
this happened in, I think it was 2000, if I remember correctly. It's
Mhm.
been so long now. It's like ending up becoming a cold case.
And there have been cases where people have gone missing way long, like, what, how do I word this? There have been cases that were older that have been solved. So
Mhm.
right
I don't think it's
now
out of the realm.
there's a super high chance that if somebody comes forward with the right information, then it could possibly unlock the door to the answer, and
Mhm.
um the, it could be the key to knowing what exactly happened to him,
Yeah.
or
Or
possibly
even
even
just
finding him.
yeah, or if anyone has information, like, if he was ever even slightly suicidal or
Mhm.
had ever had thoughts about weird rituals, like was what was mentioned in his journal, I think that would help shed a little bit more light on it too.
Yeah, because
But
it's all just so confusing. There's so many
mhm,
different weird pieces of the case, it doesn't just
exactly.
quite fit together.
Mhm. Yep,
So,
unfortunately. If you do have more information, if we didn't cover certain aspects of the case that you do know about, make sure to let us know
mhm.
um, on our social media or even on YouTube comments. That would be awesome.
Yes.
Or if you do have information about the case, please contact Arkansas State Police at 800 553 3820. They are still taking tips to this day and they are still investigating.
It's
So,
still an open case.
yeah, if you know anything, please give your information. Even if it's just the slightest detail, it could
Mhm.
help shed light on part of what happened here.
Yeah. And like we mentioned in the disclaimer, if you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or a crisis, call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Again, it is never too late to get help. To find programs, toolkits, fact sheets, and other resources to help you take effective action, you can visit the links in either the show notes or the description of this video. So, with that, thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Yep, we hope you guys liked this episode and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Weird and Wicked podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you drop a like and leave a review.
And make sure to subscribe and follow us on all of our socials so you know when the next episode is up.